Don't go home, play video games till 2 a.m., wake up and expect to be able to turn wrenches and diagnose and do all these difficult tasks all day long.
Hey, folks, most people don't go from damage appraisals to service advisor to fix ops director, let alone in a very short period of time. From running claims across and appraisals across West Texas to writing $3.5 million in service gross as a top rated CSI advisor. Now he's leading fixed operations at a luxury store in Texas. He's seen in the business from both sides of the desk, which I'm really hoping that we can get into today. Today, we find out what taught him how to get through those steps, and hopefully we can share it very well for you. Ladies and gentlemen, Tanner Neal on Registrar's podcast.
Wow. Thank you. Thank you
You are
for
most
having me.
welcome. Thank you very much. You are most welcome. I try to find individuals. Well, I do most of my searching on LinkedIn, as many know, but I try to find individuals who are slightly outside of the normal, whether it's a story that I think might be present, or maybe you've made a piece of content that sparked my interest, or it's a series of steps that don't necessarily make sense, but can be something that a technician can go, I can maybe backtrack to that and do that, or maybe I can advance my career and do that and do that. It's those interesting things. And the biggest interesting bit was the damage appraisal. So you started on the collision side, and that's a great way to kind of intro this. Like, what got you into automotive?
More than anything, necessity. I'm from West Texas. West Texas is known for oil field, right? Landman. Everybody may or may not have seen Taylor Sheridan's Landman. My family did not grow up in the oil field, so therefore I knew nothing about the oil field. I
Hmm.
graduated from Texas Tech and moved back to my hometown and tried to enter the oil field and realized very quickly that it is not a fit for me. I moved to the DFW Metroplex area and tried to sell printers and copiers and quickly realized that I was way in over my head. The hustle and bustle of the city life was not for me. And I was out of options. I had a family friend who had just purchased a property damage appraisal franchise in Abilene, and he had called me just telling me how great it was. And I had told him how terrible my situation was. And he was like, well, what do you think about buying another office in the West Texas market? And I was like, I'm in. So I packed a bag, moved to Abilene for about 3 weeks and lived with him and learned the ropes. And then we bought an office in West Texas, and that's how I got started. Cars were really never even on my radar. My brother-in-law worked for a auto group when I was in college, and I kind of dabbled and did a little, not really an internship or an apprenticeship or anything like that. I was just kind of on the service drive. It's more of a favor to my sister and my family that I was even there. So there's really no structure to it. The dealer group had never done anything like that. And, I did that for a summer and was like, dealership is not for me. The car industry is not for me. So it really was just out of necessity. I needed something, and I was willing to. I've always been willing to work. Yeah, and it's been a huge blessing, massive blessing.
It's interesting how the necessity of life brings forth a lot of giving, a lot of gifts and blessings, depending on how you look at it. And whether you came up with many of my guests have a lineage of automotive in some capacity, or they just have an innate love of cars and they want to get into whether it's working on or selling or servicing in some capacity, working on them. But once you get in it, it's, as the saying goes, it once automotive gets its hooks in,
Yep.
it very rarely lets go. And if you're willing to work and you're willing to put in the time and energy required to be successful, you can be successful. It just depends on the circumstances that you get yourself into. And one of the challenges that a lot of guests have, as well as the audience and some of the feedback I've had over the years, is, pay is always a problem. Well, pay is only a problem on your side of the stuff that you can control. You can control where you work. You can control who you work for, and you can control how hard you work. And I know, unfortunately, a lot of folks have put a lot of time, energy, and effort into working hard and learning and so on and so forth, but they haven't quite found the person or the business to work for to help them be successful. And that's what we continue to make the show for is those people who want to work hard, who want to be successful, who want to provide for their families and learn what it takes to be successful in automotive. Hopefully we can help them find good places to work. So to that point, you found a good place and you started doing damage appraisals. And what was that first year like dealing with damage, dealing with cars? And then tell us how it transitioned from doing damage appraisals to working for a dealership.
So it was baptism by fire. I've always learned that way. Again, not a car person at all. I'm a people person. I've always felt that. I've always believed that. I've been told that my whole life. Yeah, it's just that's that's my thing. I make connections. I've always said it's not what you know, it's who you know. So I treat every relationship as a stepping stone. So in that, I didn't know what I was doing. I relied on making relationships at body shops and meeting some of these people that were, working on these cars and them kind of walking me through it. As a franchise, there was really no training for it. It was kind of, here's your software, here are your insurance companies that we've, procured for you. Make sure you get the estimate into them within 48 hours and ready, set, go. And I covered, so in my market, I was about 150 miles in either direction. So I would drive sometimes 8, 9, 10 hours a day just picking up claims. And again, they all had to be turned in within 48 hours. And we maintained that throughout hail season. Where I'm at is at that time was a huge hail area, hail zone, right?
Hmm.
But that was our bread and butter, and it was just eat what you kill, and that I thrived off of that. I had no, sorry, I was my own boss. I had nobody to report to, and any and every single claim that I had, I was responsible for, and yeah, it was a massive learning curve, but it really taught me, I guess, the work ethic required in the auto industry, which is all gas, no brakes. Is kind of what it seems like, people that can take that mentality and run with it seem to be the ones that thrive.
Exactly. To that point, because there's a lot of folks who don't understand what's involved in doing damage appraisals for houses, for cars, and so on and so forth. What are translated from doing those damage appraisals into being a service advisor that allowed you to do like a $3.5 million gross year?
Biggest thing was just communication, right? Communication with customers, explaining the process to them, being upfront, making sure that they knew, from the moment you contacted them, this is what's going to happen, and this is what I'm going to do, and this is when I'm going to contact you. And if you take all of the questions out of it up front, you set the expectations. And there's no questions left for the customer really. Estimating is estimating, right? Body damage is body damage. Failed mechanical components is failed mechanical components. They all take labor, they all take parts. So there really wasn't a difference in that aspect of it. The biggest similarity though was just simply communication with customers. And that's something that I preach and preach and preach to my advisors now is, if you can handle it, the entire transaction up front and give them the expectations up front, then there's no guesswork in it for them, right? And from the moment that you call and set up the appointment, if you ask the right questions, everything seems to take care of itself. And when things do pop up, surprises do pop up, because you've laid the foundation for that relationship, you've built some of that rapport. Customers seem to trust that it is simply just a surprise. It's not a gotcha moment.
Hmm.
And so, I try to always answer my phone. Even now, I have customers that still call my cell phone. Some of them call it 10:30 at night, which is wildly inappropriate, but it's totally fine. And they know that from me, and I've told them that. And it was that way, when I was doing body damages as well. Sometimes the body shop would contact the customer instead of contacting me, right? And now the customer is somehow in the middle when I'm supposed to be in the middle. I'm supposed to be between the two. And so I always tried to make myself available to the customers then, and that translated really well to the service advisor position as well.
Awesome. So it seems like one of the things that it's a recurring theme, especially for service advisors and technicians for that matter, is how important communication is. It doesn't matter whether you're trying to sell something, because at the end of the day, you're always trying to sell something, you're trying to sell yourself, right? You're always trying to sell yourself, especially in any service industry of any kind. And technicians regularly tell me, "Oh, we're not in sales." Absolutely, you are.
You are
You're
now.
selling yourself every single day, and whether you do video MPIs or not, like Josh Arnold does, you're selling yourself every single day. So that communication skill is imperative. Now, to that point, because seemingly the consistency of communication, the clarity of communication that's required when doing appraisals, that seemingly translated into being an advisor. Have you now, as someone who probably hires, unfortunately let go from time to time advisors, do you look to the appraisal industry, whether it's for houses, for cars, or for boats, or whatever the case may be? Do you look to appraisal industry to hire advisors?
I have interviewed, and I've actually had people that I've worked with in the past who have come in to interview with me, come in and asked if I've had positions open, and I refer them out. My situation's a little unique in that I have only lost one service advisor in my tenure, and that was because he was promoted to a management position elsewhere. I haven't had to interview for that position really in my career. What ended up actually happening when that gentleman left, we had a shop foreman who wanted to progress his career,
Hmm.
and so we made the decision to move him to service advisor, and we hired another person to fill his position, and he's
Interesting. That
done
I'd like to dig
incredible.
into that in a little bit
Yeah,
more. I'd like to dig into that a little bit more. So, was the gentleman a non-working foreman or a working foreman before becoming an advisor?
I have only flagging foreman. Um,
Mm.
and I see the purpose for both, but in
Hmm.
my market, my store, it doesn't make sense. I'm not big
Okay.
enough. West Texas is such a relationship driven place that some customers don't know where that line is, right? They don't know when they're crossing the line. So we often have customers that end up finding their way back to the shop. They just walk through the garage door, and every single one of my technicians knows, hey, we don't need to throw stuff at them. We don't need to yell at them. We don't need to kick them out. Just if you can answer their question, great. If not, just walk them up front and talk to them. This particular person was actually at a satellite store, and he was running. We have 4 bays that are about 3 blocks away, and
Hmm.
somehow customers figured out where that store was and that their vehicle was over there. And so he dealt with customers often coming in and bothering him. And so I knew that he had the ability to communicate with them well, just because whenever we would get CSI reviews back, they would talk about how awesome their technician Freddie was. He answered all their questions, and we're like, we weren't even aware you talked to Freddie, but awesome. Great, great. So glad he was so great to y'all.
That really doubles down on how important it is through not only the interview process, if you're hiring for it, but through the coaching process from a leadership standpoint to making sure that all of your technicians are capable of well communicating to customers because you never know when they are actually commuting to customers. They could be at the grocery store, it could be at the local Texaco. It could be anywhere where a customer sees, oh, hey, how you doing? I haven't seen you without your uniform on. It's good to see you. And how well and how eloquent that they are speaking out in public also has a certain bearing on the business as a brand, whether it's the store as a brand or the brand itself, regardless of what the logo is on the front of the store. That communication piece is key because it builds trust. And obviously, this individual has built trust over time, so much so that the store didn't know that it was occurring because they had found out where he was. So that's again another nail in that saying you need to learn how to communicate as a technician. It doesn't matter whether you are or aren't doing video MPIs. So the next point to that is what happened between becoming a service advisor? What is the time frame? What is the maybe some of the learning tidbits that you can give, whether it's a technician listening or a service advisor listening? What are the tidbits that you learned specifically? Like give me maybe one or two granular pieces that you learned along the way to start really hitting that 3.5 mil gross, because we can talk about and say communication is key. What's maybe one or two things that you learn very specific, very granular that you can teach somebody right here and
Don't talk too much. We're talking about communication and being a really good communicator, right? One of the first things I learned in the first couple of months being a service advisor was that I was almost overselling. I was over explaining. I was getting into the granular details, and customers were either losing interest or I don't know. I really just began to present the information that I was given by my technicians in a manner, technicians have their lingo and things like that. And me not being a car person, I always have to ask, hey, dumb it down for me so that I can explain it. I would explain it and then just wait for the next question. And that paid dividends as an advisor, right? You don't want to talk yourself into discounts. You don't want to talk yourself into
Doubt.
doubt, over explaining that creates some doubt. I have the best technicians, plain and simple. They are the greatest group of guys of any shop, and I'll put them up against anybody. They are incredible. I trust them with anybody's car, everybody's car. They are just the best group of gentlemen ever. And so you just have to take that and present it to the customer with the same belief, that what they're recommending to you is because it's needed, right? It's not we're not snake oil salesmen. These are tangible and visible things, thanks to video MPI, things that you need, and you just kind of have to let the customer make that decision on their own.
That's a really good piece of advice. Something that I've strived for 42 years of my 42 years of life is learning how to not talk too much, or learning when to shut up because you've talked enough. That you don't want to convince somebody that you're not the person that needs to do the job, or not the person who needs to sell a job, or whatever the case may be. Keeping your mouth shut, fundamentally, that my dad, my grandfather, my in-law, like everybody's, figure out how to keep your mouth shut. The more you can keep it shut, the more often opportunities come for whatever reason. And you start to realize that once you do keep your mouth shut, more things come to pass. So, great piece of advice.
To add to that, this 70-80% of being a service advisor is listening and translating information to the technician. You are not diagnosing it on the drive. Your job is to get as much information as possible that will make the technicians as effective as possible, while building rapport with the customer, building a relationship with the customer. That's your job. You need to build trust with the customer so that whenever you present the information from your incredible technicians that have been doing this for a while and have put in a lot of effort to diagnose this car, what they're recommending is right, and the customer believes you because you've built the relationship with them, because you've listened to their problems. In this industry, it feels like there's so much distrust, and rightfully so. I haven't been in the dealership for a ton of time, but it is known that some dealerships are a little jiffy, and the whole industry is trying their hardest to overcome that now. And I love being a part of that. But sometimes, we just need to listen and hear the customer and acknowledge their complaints and tell them, they're not crazy, and translate that the best way we can to the guys that are going to fix the vehicle.
Exactly. You have to ask good questions,
Yes.
listen to the answers, and be able to succinctly communicate that to the technician. And when you do that consistently, and this is one of the things that many advisors and technicians for that matter, don't understand, is that when you do that, when you ask good questions, you listen to the answer, and then you communicate clearly, that is the act of building trust. That thing there. It's like, well, how do you build trust? How do you build trust? Listen, then do the thing you say you're going to do. You do that consistently and repeatedly, people begin to trust you, so that you have to speak even less and you get to do more. The interesting thing is, and I'm testament to this as an advisor, coming off the bench as a technician, flat rate technician at a Dodge store, turning into a service advisor at a Dodge store. I made all of the mistakes. I tried to diagnose in the service drive because I knew how. I talked myself into discounts, and I talked myself into this, and I was making so little money, and I couldn't understand why, because I knew so much. And then thankfully I had a service manager. It's like, you talk too much. I know you know the stuff, but it's not your job anymore. Your job is to eloquently translate what they find as a customer, so that the technician gets great notes so they can actually diagnose the problem. Think about you being on the bench. What would you want to see as your customer complaint? What would you want to see? How do you get that from the customer? Do that. Ask the good question, get the good answer, then it translates into the technician well, and now you're making more money. And like, it was like a 30-day shift. And it's like, all of a sudden I was making like 25% more money. So
It
great.
takes time. It's a hard thing. Even for me now, I have to subconsciously tell myself, stop, just shut up. I think it's as a service advisor, you have to be wired a certain way to want to help people continuously, right? And with that, you're gonna try to solve people's problems on the drive. But that's not our job. Our job is to be extremely effective communicators to both the technicians and to the customers, and that's it.
Exactly. So you were speaking about customer problems. And one of the challenges from both service advisor and from a technician standpoint is being able to eloquently translate. What would you say, let's say, pull something in out of your mindset. It doesn't matter whether it's the last 30 days or the last 3 years, it doesn't matter. Pull something out where a customer came in and the customer was super challenging from all points of view, meaning they were a challenging customer to deal with. It was challenging to get it on the work order because either the service advisor didn't listen or the service advisor didn't understand or the customer just wasn't communicating well. Then it got in the shop, and because of all of that poor communication, they didn't do well. And then you had to sort that crisis out where you've got an unhappy customer, you've got, a service advisor pulling the hair out, and you've got a technician who's basically upset at the whole process because they can't do their job. Can you give me an example? See, certain details need to be omitted, but can you give me an example of that?
I think the most common, fortunately, that doesn't happen often. Um, and I think that's the training that we've done. But the most common is going to be rattle noises, right?
Hmm.
Advisors not asking, and everything's plastic, and so there's always rattles, right? And at certain points, turn the volume up on the car. I mean, it's just certain point, it's just cars now. I think the number one thing would be rattles, or maybe like transmission shifts, but advisor not asking, right? Okay, where is this happening? Where's the sound located? Is it on bumpy roads? Is it on smooth roads? Is it on every road? And then technician taking their notes and not wanting to rock the boat, or maybe they're under the impression it's going to take more time to wait on the advisor to call the customer to ask the right questions, that they just go on their test drive to try to duplicate the concern. And of course, it's plastic and they hear all kinds of stuff, but the customer was specifically talking about the left rear shock absorber, or there's a thud in the left rear, and technician turns it back in because it's just plastic rattling, no problem found. Customer comes to pick up their vehicle, they already know that there's a rattle. They're not crazy, right? We didn't ask the right questions. They're not crazy. They're upset. My office is on the service drive, so I try to do my best to talk to customers as they're checking out, making sure everything went well. So, I have taken those situations where the customer has said, I brought it in for this, and y'all said there wasn't anything wrong, and I've gotten in the car with them and confirmed. And I think that's probably the most common thing is rattle noises, right? And if the advisor would have just asked a couple more questions, we would have saved time with the technician. We would have, had a happier visit. All of them have worked out, right? We really do have great CSI, and I think we have checks and balances in place to ensure that. Did that answer your question?
Think it's getting there. One of the things there that I think anybody listening or watching needs to understand is there's going to be a lot of challenging customers. And I think depending on the volume of the store that you work at, you're going to have more
Right.
per capita as you go up in volume, right? The percentage remains. If you have, and then you think about Six Sigma, the whole concept of Six Sigma is they're trying to get one failure, get the failure rate down to 1 in 100,000. That's the Six Sigma. Mazda never achieved it. Motorola never achieved it. Nobody's ever truly achieved Six Sigma because it's such an obscene number to try and hit. That even in 1 in 10,000 means that 1 in 10,000 of the part, 1 in 10,000 of the car, 1 in 10,000 of the transaction. And that's a really good number to hit. Most don't even get to 100, right? 1 in 100 failures of process, of parts, of communication. It happens. So when you have things break down, having the systems and processes in place to handle crisis, to handle challenges is one thing. And that's a really good sign of a really good store when you have those kinds of things in place. The secondary point is when you have challenging things like this, from a technician and from a advisor's standpoint, is even though we're saying don't talk too much, the flip side is make sure you ask enough questions. It's not necessarily good questions all the time that get you there. It's enough questions. Like, how do I make sure that I have enough in this customer complaint to ensure the technician has enough to find the challenge, to find the concern, to find the situation that the customer is talking about? Not find the problem. We're not finding problems. We're only finding situations, right? If you've asked enough good questions as an advisor, you're going to get enough good information. The flip side is, from a technician standpoint, don't assume the advisor has asked enough good questions every single time.
Yeah.
You can't, because they're going to make mistakes, because they aren't you. They
Yeah.
aren't a technician. They aren't technician focused. They aren't flat rate mentality. They don't know the things you do. They don't have the care that you do, because you care about the car. They care about the person, right? Fundamentally speaking, you care about the car. They care about the person. If you don't have enough, you need to ask.
Yeah.
It doesn't mean you have to question everything, but it means you need to read it. You need to think about what the service advisor had to ask to get that information. And then you have to go through your head, okay, did we talk about weather? Yes or no? Did we talk about speed? Yes or no? Did we talk about location? Yes or no? Did we talk about turning? Yes or no? Did we talk about braking? Yes or no? Did we talk about electrical things that are on in the car at the time, in terms of, and we're talking about noises here. We're going down the NVH highway of understanding where, how, whatever it happens. What's the temperature in the car? What's the temperature outside the car? Did all of those things get answered in that concern? If the answer is no, go and ask the advisor for more information. Either they did ask and they didn't get it eloquently on the page, or they didn't ask and you need to get it. Because when it comes to those very specific, like especially for NVH concerns, you know that you need to ask more questions 99% of the time. 99% of the time. Because everything else, like the check engine light's on, or the transmission light's on, or the powertrain light's on, or this light's on, they don't know that anything is actually wrong. They just know that there's a light on. That's all they know. So you go, boop, 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 boop. Okay, let's start the diagnostic journey, because now we have a code and we have a starting point, perhaps. Flip side is, if you've got no check engine light diagnostic concerns, same thing as NVH. If you've got wind noise, same thing as NVH. You got, like, when you don't have a concrete, that's a thing, go figure it out. That's what you got to do. You got to ask more questions. So
And you
that
can
leads us
train
to,
as a technician. You're a technician listening. You do this enough times to the same service advisor over and over and over again, they're going to start asking, because nobody wants to pick up the phone and say, hey, you dropped off your car an hour ago and we're just now getting to it. But all of a sudden, my technician can't look at it because I didn't ask enough questions. Can you tell me this, 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 and this? You do that enough to the advisor is going to learn, oh, wait, I need to ask this question. And, to the advisor's point, like you said, the advisor doesn't know what questions to ask. You have to tell them. And the more you do
even
that,
if they have a cheat sheet, for NVH, they aren't necessarily going to know what question to ask to answer what's on the cheat sheet.
Yep.
Right. And one of the things, and you touched on something here that I would like to say, because I'm not sure I've actually said it before. You touched on it. When the advisor has to call a customer, hey, Mr. or Mrs. Customer, I realize you just dropped it off an hour ago and we're just getting into it, but my technician says, one of the things that I bring this back to, and it's touched on that famous hospitality book, and they touch on it in Disney, and they touched on it in the really famous Cadillac store, like is it Sewell Cadillac or whatever the case may be. I can't remember whether that's the right one or not. One of the things that every single one of those customer-centric places do is they never, ever, ever put any onus on anyone else other than the person who is speaking. If a service advisor is calling the customer, the only people speaking are the service advisor and the customer. You never say my manager. You never say my technician. You never say anybody else. I am the one you're talking to. It is my fault. Take the onus. It doesn't matter whether it's good or bad, because everything is your fault, good or bad. Take the onus, because as soon as you start saying my technician wants, well, it's immediately you're passing the buck onto somebody else. It doesn't matter why, good or bad, you're passing the buck onto somebody else. The only time that you want to do that is when you're giving credit. Our technicians were able to get it done faster for you. That is the kind of passing the buck that you want to do, because that also gives more credibility to yourself and it gives credibility to your team. So always take the blame, never take the credit as a service advisor. You want to build more trust, never take the blame. Never pass the blame. Always give credit. You do that and you're going to see your trust and your rapport go through the roof, and you're going to sell way more to way more people because they trust you to be honest and take the blame for the things that you should be. That is an old school hospitality rule that my grandfather taught me because he was in the motel business for forever. Never passed the buck. So that's my little tidbit for advisors. To the next point, which you've been an advisor, you've sold a lot as an advisor, you've learned a lot in the last 12 or 15 years in the automotive industry, even though it wasn't your first choice. You now love it. It's been a blessing. It's been something that you love to do. You're doing very well. You're growing. What's your one piece of advice for a technician to be happier, healthy, more productive in the shop?
Terms of burnout or longevity, right? I think that's the biggest thing for technicians, and understandably, right? I've never turned a wrench, but I can see it, and I can see, bodies getting worn. It would be, protect protect your body, and what I mean by that is garbage in, garbage out, right? So many technicians are drinking 3, 4, 5 energy drinks a day just to get that lift, and it's not doing anything for you in the long run. Eat well, get good sleep. Don't go home, play video games till 2 a.m., wake up and expect to be able to turn wrenches and diagnose and do all these difficult tasks all day long, right? We're at the dealership for 10, 11, 12 hours. You can't do that on 5 hours of sleep and 6 Red Bulls. Fuel your body correctly. Don't put yourself in financial strain with things to impress other people, right? Spend your money on things that buy you time back, right? We're here 10, 11, 12 hours a day. What things can earn you more time, more longevity? Buy good boots. If your dealership doesn't provide those for you, invest in good shoes because you're on them all day long, on your feet all day long. Invest in tools that reduce time, not just look cool. I know Rat Fink and all, it's a good deal. We actually provide toolboxes, so there are none of those. But in the instance, right, you are buying your own toolbox. Just because it has Rat Fink on it doesn't make it any better than, I don't know, a Kohler, whatever. Invest your money in things that buy you time, and that's one thing you can't get back, right? And then most importantly, probably would be protect your mind. What I try to tell, I have a lot of young techs, and what I try to tell them is between each RO, right? Find something that allows you to reset each time. Start fresh multiple times a day, right? To where the comeback that you did this morning that took up 2 or 3 hours doesn't take the rest of your day in frustration, right? You've turned it in, it's over, reset.
I like that a
Hard
lot.
diagnostic, turn it in, reset. Because if you
I
carry
like that
that
a lot.
into the rest of the day, the rest of the week, you are going to burn yourself out. You have to be able to find something, whether that's a walk around the bullpen, going and washing your hands and getting a water bottle, find something that just resets each time you pull a car in.
I really like that, and I'll double down on that. That's one of the things that, a couple years ago when I was spending a lot of time trying to do one-on-one coaching with technicians and getting them to do is, you got box breathing, however you want to call box breathing or the 888 breathing or however you call it. I've done it all different ways. It really helps. The hardest thing to do in those circumstances in the reset is remembering to do the
Hmm.
reset. Because if you can do the reset consistently, you can get it to become a habit.
Habit.
However, the challenge with our day to day is that nothing about our day is habitual. Very, 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 very little about our day is habitual, other than maybe the monster or
Which is
Red
also
Bull.
what I love about this industry, right? Nothing's the same. But
Nothing is the same. Now, there is repetition in the stuff that we fix. If you work on a 2024 Mercedes C-Class 3C, like a C350, it's going to be the same, more than likely 9 out of 10 times. If the check engine light's on, it's going to be exactly the same thing. If you pull in a 204 with a check engine light on, pretty much guarantee exactly what it's going to be. You pull in a W series, more than likely it's going to be exactly the same problems. You pull in a GL350, more than likely it's going to need a DEF tank. If it's got, 45,000 miles on it, it's going to need one more than likely because that is a common fault. But at the same time, when you pull it in, it's a different family every single time. Every single vehicle that you work on is a different family. And what that vehicle means to them, it doesn't matter whether it's a Ford Pinto or a GL450, that vehicle means something to them in
mhm.
a certain way. And how you treat that vehicle is like how you treat that family. So it's really hard for me, no matter how challenging this industry is, no matter how hard some technicians have it, they may not be working for a great brand, or they may not be working for a great leader that doesn't take care of them. They get in a circumstance where they don't care. They want to throw caution to the wind, and it's like, okay, I don't really care. Does it fix? I don't care. It's hard for me, but at the same time, I have empathy for them because they're not in the greatest of circumstances. So to think about it from the reset between work orders, whether it's take a walk, take a breathe, any one of those things, that's a really great piece of advice. Thank you.
Yeah, I think it's so important. And it doesn't just apply to technicians either, right? One of my favorite parts of this job is taking upset customers and trying to make them pleased with your outcome, or pleased with you, pleased with the dealership, but ultimately you, right?
Hmm.
That is one of my favorite parts of my job, is upset customers. Not all of them. You can't make everybody happy, but the ones that you can just are a little bit sweeter. And I don't know why that is. Maybe I don't know. Maybe I'm cynical and think that I can change everybody's mind and make everybody like me. But
Well, it's the same principle. It's the same principle as a technician. You're a people person, not a car person. So the technician is trying to figure out how to make that really, 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 really challenging repair and how to get it fixed, right? It's that transmission judder that 3 shops haven't been able to fix, which has probably gone through 4 technicians who haven't figured out why it is or why it's happening or being able to even duplicate it,
did we talk
right?
about
It's
that car before we started?
nope.
All right.
Trying to get those things to figure that out, right? Those are the common issues between people and cars.
Yeah,
Yeah, those challenging pieces. Well, Tanner, thank you very much for sharing a little bit of your story with us today.
absolutely. Thank you so much for having me.
You are most welcome. Most welcome. And folks, that sounds like we're going to wrap it up here. I really hope you guys enjoyed the show, that you hit that like button, that subscribe button, and maybe even share it with a technician or a service advisor that you know that might need to hear some of this message from Tanner today. And we're going to end with a quote like we always do. I got a little something written down from quite a while ago, but I think it stands to reason that it applies again, as it always does. There is little that can withstand a man who can conquer himself. Louis XIV. Remember, folks, negative pushes, positive pulls, and always clean your toys before you put them away.